First of all, the procurement framework significantly modernized the approach to procurement because it aligns with the good practices worldwide. So the idea is really to identify the best way to achieve value for money. Fit for purpose, as you know, is a cornerstone. It's one of the most important principles that guides our decision. And it is also an enabler for value for money. So to do this, of course, there are a number of options, a number of methods that are not new worldwide, but we haven't used before. For example, competitive dialogue is a very good way to leverage the market when we cannot define in detail all the specifications, the detail of the project, but we want, in fact, to leverage innovation in the markets. There are different ways to achieve the same results that we really want to hear from the market. So it's an iterative process. It's defined in the regulation, but also we are preparing a very detailed guidance note to explain the process. It's a complex process, but drives value very well in highly complex cases. This is just an example, but there are many others. Best and final offer, of course, the option of using negotiations. The idea is to find the best way to achieve the objectives, right? So depending on the complexity, depending on the market, depending on the type of procurement, depending on the environment, depending on all these considerations that help us define the best approach to go to the market. In fact, the procurement framework became effective on July 1st, 2016, and is now being rolled out. Implementation is going very well so far. We have received consistently positive feedback from clients, from the private sector, and from staff. Clearly, it's a new paradigm. It's a very different approach, but building on a lot of experience we had in the client countries with our staff. So the borrower are receiving very well because they are, in fact, using the new methods. We have evidence from the early evidence from the project procurement strategy for development that the new methods are being used, that the assessment of the project are done in a very systematic way to define the best way to achieve value for money, to go to the market. So we're very pleased with it, and of course we have also rolled out massive learning programs, including online learning and face-to-face. So the reaction from all the stakeholders has been very positive. So far, 340 projects have been using the new framework. These are the new projects for which the initiating consent memorandum was honored after July 1st. And there are also some projects that we're already under preparation. We call it early adopters. There are about 6 projects that are using it because we allow to use it because it makes sense. So, and of course, every day there are new projects that are being prepared. So. Okay. Monitoring evaluation is critical both for the bank and the client. Well, for the bank, it's critical to determine whether the framework is having its intended impact and not really adding value. For the client, it's very important to determine whether the procurement process is producing outcomes that have an impact on their development objectives, on the value for money, on achieving the intended outcomes. So we have actually developed an initial monitoring evaluation, which from the bank point of view is focused on the main commitment that we made with the framework, which essentially are, we are going to be more efficient, more effective, we're going to build capacity, and we're going to increase integrity. So we're developing the framework around these 4 pillars. And of course, it will continue to be developed as more data become available through the systems. We have a new tracking system called systematic tracking of exchanges in procurement, or STEP, which allow to monitor the process from end to end, generate many data that will allow us with this. We have other systems that produce data, and we are already beginning to monitor initially based on inputs and outputs. Basically, we're monitoring whether we are applying the new methods, whether there is a behavioral change in a way because the process is being implemented as intended, and so far things are moving in a very positive direction. And later on, when we have a bigger saturation of projects in the system, we'll be able actually to begin to measure impact. We're really helping, for example, the efficiency of the project, the achievement of the development objectives, building the capacity, and so forth. So this is going to be very promising to be able to really have a conversation with all the stakeholders and explain how the framework has helped them, and has helped the objective of the bank. On the other hand, though, it's critical to work with the clients, and we're doing that in many countries, to use data analytics to really help them monitor the impact of procurement beyond the bank, procurement in their system on their development objectives. So we're working on that as well. Data analytics are a bit of a new frontier, but measuring performance of procurement is also one of the most important areas on which we concentrate, and we're actually collaborating with a broad range of partners on this, including OECD countries. So we're actually interested in seeing some of the experience in our client countries as well. First of all, we are collaborating very closely with the other MDB, also with bilateral donors, but in particular with the MDB, we have a close teamwork with all the areas of procurement. All of the MDB, or most of them, are actually in the process of reforming their system in a way that is very consistent to ours. The Islamic Development Bank is working on that, the Asian Development Bank is doing that. Even the new banks, for example, the Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank, AIIB, has adopted a policy that is very consistent with ours. It's very, very similar. Of course, some other banks have a slightly different structure and focus, but they are very, very close and very consistent. The European Development Bank, the European Investment Bank, the African Development Bank also has enacted a new policy that is very consistent with the bank with some small differences. So I would say we are very aligned. Of course, we are focusing very much on key issues rather detail, but we are very much aligned. In fact, on some areas we are collaborating beyond the procurement policy. For example, we are collaborating on revising the methodology for assessing procurement system, or MAPS, which now incorporates a lot of the key important topics that I just mentioned, and it's really driven by this importance need to measure performance by working with a broad range of stakeholders, and several of the other, value for money and several of the other. We have just finished working together with all the MDBs, countries ranging the spectrum of development and bilateral donors on revising the methodology. We're testing it, and actually what is very exciting that it's not only being tested by our client countries, but even by OECD countries. Norway, for example, is in the process of testing it on their own system, which joins the conversation between the work we have been doing with our countries and the conversation that is going on at the OECD and other countries, because ultimately we are really working on what is the best approach, the most efficient approach to achieve the value for money, and to incorporate all the new elements of procurement wherever it's applied. So this is a very exciting moment, a moment of collaboration, a moment of partnership, a moment of very active engagement with a complete range of stakeholders, in fact, including with the private sector, where we started a very intense outreach program on certain sectors, and also with civil society, where the importance of data and transparency is becoming critical to be able to close the feedback loop and collaborate actively, continuously improving the process.